I wanted to make this video because I'm kind of getting tired of hearing people talk about oppression and not understand the role that they play in many of the things that they call oppression. It's like you can't challenge people to do better. If anything, if there is oppression out there, if the odds are stacked against you, then you should need more challenging to overcome those things. You know, you got it tougher out there. You got to work harder. But that's not what you get. What you get is too often people, they see what they believe is oppression, or they see what they believe are challenges, and they use that as an excuse to not try. And that's what bothers me. And because, you know, I want to see people prosper. I want to see people do better. I want to see the Black community do better. And it frustrates me because it's so much so much talk about it over so many different topics, but people don't see their own role in the problems that they face in their life and that the community faces. Let me give an example. And this isn't just a Black thing, but this is kind of like the whole victim mentality. All right, so let's talk about, how much money people were making, or let's say jobs. You know, people don't do root cause analysis. They don't say, well, what was the start of this problem? They just start off with, this is the problem, and there's not an appropriate solution provided to me by the government. So that's where you mess up at. You don't start off with, this is my problem now, somebody else needs to fix this. You start off with, what was the cause of the problem, right? So let's look at individuals. You can make blanket statements, and you can make blanket statements about how slavery affected us, which it did. And the civil rights, the lack of civil rights in recent years affected us, and it did. And, racism today, let's say racism today still affects us. Okay, it does. I'll grant you all of that. None of that changes the fact that you are an individual who makes choices, either good or bad. You have moral agency. And if you weren't trained to use that moral agency properly, then that is the fault of your parents who didn't raise you properly. And this isn't to, I believe that most parents do the best that they could. They'll have shortcomings, just like I have shortcomings as a parent. So I believe that parents generally do the best that they can. But with that being said, when they have flaws and those flaws affect their children, they ought to be held accountable. Now, I'm not saying like you take their kids from them, or you go up to an old man and say, you old man, you didn't raise your kids right, I'm going to knock you down the stairs. I'm not saying it. I'm just saying you have to recognize and acknowledge where the issues are. And you got to recognize where the issues are and be willing to acknowledge them and take whatever action you can. Because let me tell you one thing. We're all individuals who make choices, and regardless of what happened to our ancestors, regardless of what happened to like our parents, regardless of the situations we're in, we make choices. Some of them are tough choices. Some of them are ugly choices. Some of them are choices where both of them are terrible. But you make choices, and be willing to own up to the choices you make. Let me give you an example. People say like, you can't live off a minimum wage, and, $8,000 an hour or $7 an hour, whatever, is not enough. This single mom has kids, and, this person over here is struggling to make ends meet. She got to work 2 jobs. But see, you're looking at the situation and you're assuming that you're not taking into account how that situation happened. If that woman, and she didn't do it by herself. So if that woman and the man had kids before they were financially able to take care of them, whose fault is that? It's not the government's fault. And that's what we do. That's what most of us do. Most black, white, whatever, like most of us, that's what we do in this culture. We have sex, we have kids before we can afford them. And the government, basically becomes like a stepdad or whatever. Now, people make mistakes. Nobody has to be perfect. But you can't ignore the cause or the decisions that people make to get in bad situations and then blame the government for not jumping in and rescuing them. And the crazy thing is, you don't do that personally in your own life. You don't do that. You don't do that. So if somebody had, let's say somebody has a gambling problem, right? Let's say they have a gambling problem and they do good as long as they don't go to casino. You know, as long as they don't actually step foot in there for somehow, let's say somehow this person actually does pretty good. But then let's say they chose, hey, my buddies are hanging out at the casino and my buddies hang out at the casino every Friday. So now I go to the casino every Friday and I spend all my money. Like, okay, I'm not perfect. I have flaws. I have a weakness that I could probably need some help with, but I'm putting myself in a situation where it's magnified. I'm doing it to myself. It's like self-destructive behavior. Like, now suppose I say, well, but I gotta hang out with the boys, or I gotta hang out with my girl. My girl works there every Friday, so I gotta be there. No, you don't. You don't have to. You make a choice to be in that situation. So you can't blame, even though that they know, even though when you go to casinos, they have ways of subtly manipulating your behavior, right? You can't, that person, or let's say I said me, so I couldn't go there and protest the casino. You guys manipulate our behavior and you do this and you do that, and it makes you want to spend more money. Well, guess what? I chose to be in that situation. That doesn't mean that it's automatically right what they do or wrong. But I made the choice to be in that situation. So I have to deal with the consequences. A woman and a man who, and this has happened to me because I got 2 kids and I did the same thing. Well, at least one. Yeah, both of them. No, one of them, my oldest, I wasn't financially ready. The second one, you know, I had a job and stuff. But that woman and that man, if they choose to have children before they are financially prepared to take care of them, that is nobody's fault but their own. That's not the fault of racism. That's not the fault of anything but their own. And you may say, well, but you know, they deserve a right to have a family. They do. But you're making a decision to start a family before you're financially ready. That is no one's fault but yourself. And this isn't to say that things don't happen. Sometimes you have a family unit and then the man takes off. So it's the man's fault. It's the man's fault. It's not the government's fault. Now, yeah, you would think that the government would help, but truth be told, it should be the family members in the community who are helping before the government hops in and helps. That's a whole nother story. But if a woman if she's a single mom with a low paying job with 2 kids because the man isn't around, what's the cause of the problem? It's not racism. It's not the low paying job. It's not slavery. And it's not even her necessarily making a bad decision unless she knew that the guy was the type that would go run off on you. You could argue they should be married, blah, 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 but then married men leave too. So basically, who's responsible? The man is responsible because he created a situation and then he didn't hold up to his responsibility. So that man needs to be held accountable. And you may say, oh, we got child support or whatever. Like, look, when we go to discussing the root cause of problems, you can't ignore that. You can't pretend like they don't happen and then just blame everything on slavery or blame everything on the government. Because I feel like that's what we do when it comes to our problems. You know, we have children that we can't afford. Then we have children young so that we can't further our education to learn the things that maybe our parents didn't teach us. So we create these environments ourselves. And then you talk about how, you know, poverty breeds violence. Well, you're kind of you're setting yourself up to be living in poverty if you're having kids at a young age, and if you're having kids when you're not financially ready, and both. Then on top of that, we do things, and I'm not trying to, this is not a bash. This is like, look, you got to be real at what the real issues are, because if you don't look at the real issues, they'll never change, and you'll constantly be looking for a solution where you ought not. And you also you're forfeiting your freedom. You're becoming a slave by having this mentality that you can't make decisions that affect your future, or you didn't make decisions that got you where you are. If you don't understand the power that you have in yourself to make decisions, then you are basically at the mercy of the same people you call your oppressor, which is the government, which is white people, which is most of the government is white. So if you have that kind of mindset, having the mentality of, I can't do anything to change this, they must do something to change it, you're saying you're powerless. You're saying you're powerless. Like, don't you understand how self-defeating that is? That's terrible. So then let's talk about violence. Look, I understand the whole story in the 80s about how crack got into the hood and how guns, like, we don't manufacture AKs and stuff like that. We know how they get into the hood. Does that mean you don't have a choice in how you live your life? And you may say, well, because my cousin Johnny lived in a crazy spot and it was so wild and people would shoot and he had to shoot someone else. Like, okay, look. The average everyday person escapes life in the hood with all of its pitfalls because they made choices. They weren't lucky. And if you think that they're lucky, you're completely robbing them of the dignity that they ought to have by making the choices that they made and living and being a moral person. Yeah, it's difficult in some places. But look, I grew up in North Philly, right? Dirt poor. There were times when I had to wear the same sneaks, like, for a couple years, holes in them. I still had to wear them. There were times when we didn't have water. And I ain't talking about just randomly like, oh yeah, that one time in 88. No, there was a couple of times we didn't have water. There was a couple of times we didn't have electric. I remember that. I had to wear my oldest brother's clothes. There were times I had like 2 pair of pants and like 2 shirts. And I would just wear the same thing over and over and over again. I would get teased in school and stuff. And those of you who know me know this was true. This is how I was. But you know what? I turned out just fine. Because by the grace of God, I was able to make some decisions, and various parts of my character kind of prevented me from doing certain things, going down a certain path. But I made it through that, and I grew up with 3 other siblings, So, and all of us went to college except for one. Out of the 4 of us, all of us literally in the same household, all of us dirt poor, all of us wearing hand-me-downs, all of us on welfare. 3 of us went to college. 1 of us didn't. It's all about choice. And then my brother who didn't go to college, who kind of went down the wrong path, he'll tell you himself, it was all about choice. Nobody oppressed me. It was all about choice, because we've had this conversation. But when you're constantly thinking someone else is doing it to you, you won't exercise the freedom and the power that you have to rise up out of that situation. You may say, like, well, there are things you can't control, like, well, the educations in the black communities are trash and that sort of thing. Well, you know what? We do have challenges in that area. I know my kids are telling me, like, yeah, well, the teacher stopped teaching because the class was so rowdy that she couldn't teach. So she just sat there for 20 minutes and she stopped teaching. Both of my kids have told me stories like that. But here's the thing. I'm a parent. It's not just the teacher's job to teach my kids. As their parent, and I haven't always done the best job of this. Actually, I think I need to do a lot better. But I need to know my kids and what they're learning and what they're not. And then I can fill in the blanks, whether with some kind of program or whether it's just me, like, hands-on. And then you may say, well, people can't do that because they're busy having to work, because they got to work 40 hours and they got to work 2 jobs or whatever. Again, that may be true. And that's an unfortunate situation for anybody to be in. But you got to go back to, who was the cause of that? Was it because that person made decisions that they couldn't fulfill the obligations to? Or is it because somebody made them? Some white man or some slave master from 300 years ago made them do it? Or did they choose to make those decisions? Now, I'm not saying that you don't help people. I'm not saying that people shouldn't need encouragement when they make mistakes. We all make mistakes and we all need it. You know, we all do, myself. But if you don't handle if you don't control what you can control, things will never change. And you'll teach your kids to be the same way. Let me give you an example about my son. My son, Jalen. My son, Jalen, wants to be an NFL quarterback. You know, he loves playing Madden. He'll make his little creative player and, you know, he'll throw like all these interceptions, right? He's gotten so much better at it. But he would throw in the triple coverage and it would get picked off. Or if you've ever played Madden, you know this. He would throw it to a receiver high across the middle or something. The receiver will bobble the ball, and then the cornerback will come and intercept it and then run the other way. And he would get so mad. And I used to always tell him, I don't know, sometimes I used to yell at him, way too much. I used to yell at him, but it's like, I would explain to him, like, you're throwing in double coverage. Or, he would say like, well, I would say, well, what happened? Why are you so upset? And he would say, because the receiver dropped the ball and the guy intercepted it. I can't play this game. And then after a while of this, I started saying, let me see the replay. And I would look at the replay and he would back up. He would take the snap and back up 20 yards. Then he'd be rolling to the left, throwing off the run to a receiver high up to the receiver got to reach, and then the receiver would get cracked, and then it'll be an interception or a turnover on downs or something because it went forward on 4th and 50. And I'm like, Jalen, stop going forward on 4th and 50. It's not going to work, and you're making yourself mad. And it took him a while to realize that, and to this day, he still does it sometimes. It's so stupid. Or I'd be like, Jalen, stop throwing in the triple coverage. Just because the guy got a 90 overall don't mean you should throw it in the triple coverage. That's why you keep getting intercepted. Jalen, you can't roll out this way, roll out that way, roll out this way, roll out that way, and then throw the ball as you're getting pounded into the dirt by a 99 overall linebacker. And I probably lost so many people right here. But y'all dudes know what I'm talking about. You can't do that and then expect your guy to catch the ball. You got to control what you can control. There are times when the stupid game cheats him. And now I'm teaching him to laugh at that. Like, look, I'm like, Jalen, you just gotta laugh. He slid all across the field and intercepted the ball, and it bounced through his helmet. Like, you can't get mad at that. You just gotta laugh, But I told him, I said, look, either you keep getting mad at this game. I said, either you stop getting mad at this game and control yourself, or you play a different game and you won't play this anymore. Now, I haven't stuck to it. I haven't stuck to that. But I know when I'm around, he does a lot better. When I'm in the room with him and he's playing, he does a lot better. And he is slowly getting better at it. He throws much less picks. But the whole point of all of that is that if you don't take responsibility for the problem, you'll never solve the problem. And then he would like just even things around the house. Like if he put the controller on the table and the controller slid off the table and fell on the floor, right? Stupid controllers break all the time. So, or like if he puts a cup somewhere, right? If he puts the cup on the edge of the table and then later on, somebody else knocks it over or something. And it's like, well, Jalen, why did you put it? You shouldn't have put the cup right there at the end of the table full of juice, or you shouldn't slam the controller down. Then it fell on the floor. And he's like, I didn't do it. It just fell. It just fell. It didn't just fall. You left it there. Or you placed it down inappropriately and then it fell over. Or you put it in a place where somebody was guaranteed to. Another thing they would do, they will put their laptops in their cell. My kids, both of them, they still do this. They will put their laptop or their cell phone on the couch. I'm like, don't put your stuff on the couch where people sit. Do not do that. And then if somebody sits on their laptop, oh, my laptop's broken. Why'd you do that? Because you have to take responsibility for the things you can change. When it comes to violence in our community, nobody is forcing two men to escalate a situation that they have between each other to guns. Nobody's forcing that. They force each other to do it. Maybe your homies or the people around may force you to do it, but The white man is not forcing you to shoot. The white man is not forcing you to take a confrontation with your brother and elevate it to where you're ready to kill him for the sake of your reputation or just because you just want to be right. Nobody's making you do that. You don't have to resolve things that way. You just don't. And you do that, and then it's like, or you see it, and you're like, come on, man, why we keep killing each other? Why we keep killing each other? Then it's like, well, it's because the white man told us to hate ourselves and this and this. Look, are you brainwashed or are you a human being? Do you have moral agency? Are you competent enough that in any given situation, excuse me, that you can make choices for yourself? Because if you are not competent enough to decide right and wrong for yourself, to not make decisions for yourself, then you should not be driving. You shouldn't have a gun. You shouldn't be managing your own finances. You should be living like a person with special needs, because that's the kind of mentality, that's the kind of person you're describing. You're describing a person with special needs that needs somebody to take care of them. So don't to go walk around talking about black power if you're living out a reality of somebody with special needs who can't take care of themselves. We all have choices. We all make choices. And when you're having an issue with someone, you decide whether or not you're going to grab a knife, whether you're going to grab a gun, especially if it's over, especially if you got your butt whipped or whatever, or if you didn't, but y'all chose to have words. You choose to go back around and find that person and escalate it. You chose to do it. The white man didn't make you do it. You could have went and tried to hash it out. And if the person didn't want to hash it out, you could have just said, well, fine, we'll agree to disagree. You just go your way, I'll go mine. But you don't want to do that. You want to be proud and you want to be, you want to show how tough you are and all that stuff. Like, nobody's making you do that. Nobody's making us do drugs. No one's making us sell drugs. I'm tired of hearing about this person had to sell drugs. This person had to commit crimes. What are you doing? What position? How are you in a position to where you have to commit crimes? You choose to commit crimes because the alternative is very difficult. So you choose to do it. And if you are in a situation if you are in a situation to where you have to commit crimes, then what you need to realize is you've made decisions that have put you in a situation to lose either your freedom or your life. You made decisions that got you there. Or you can say your parents may have made decisions that got you there if you're like a teenager or something. But it's not the white man's fault. Your parents, if they squandered away, if they're neglectful and they don't save up for you and they don't teach you right, it's your parents' fault. There's nothing wrong with holding them accountable. If you don't hold them accountable, you'll do the same thing to your kids because you won't take responsibility for what you can control as a parent. You'll blame someone else, a stranger who lived hundreds of years ago. You can't do that. You cannot do that. And then like people talk about, oh, there's no jobs in the hood and that sort of thing. What kind of job is this supposed to be for you? It is your responsibility to finish school, regardless of how bad you think that education is. It is your job to finish school and to get an education to where you can have the skills to properly market yourself so that you can support yourself. It is your responsibility to raise your children to be independent, to learn how to develop skills so that they can maintain a life for themselves. If you didn't finish school, if you dropped out of high school and now you can't get a job because you don't have a diploma, and you can't get a car because you don't have the money because you don't have a job, and that stupid cycle that tends to happen with a lot of us, you have to acknowledge your responsibility in that, or you will continue to keep doing it. And you'll pass that along to your children. So this isn't about bashing people. It's about calling you to take hold of the greatness that is in front of you. There is no better time in this country There is no greater time in this country than than now for black people to succeed. You have immigrants that come here from other countries, black immigrants. You have black people from Africa that come here and they thrive in the same systems that you say that oppressing that the white man's oppressing you in. They come here, they get the education, they about their business. And then the other thing is we spend our money on stuff that we have no business. Why do you need a $200 belt? Why? You ain't even got your own house. You got a $200 belt. Why? $300 sneaks. That's insane. I knew somebody once. Now, he could afford it because he had money. I knew somebody, he had an outfit. He said this outfit's worth like $600. I'm like, why? Why? Now, again, he could afford it, so that was a little different. But my whole point is, nobody is forcing us to go out and spend. If you're poor, you don't need to buy your kids Jordans. You don't. Buy them some New Balances or something. Buy them some cheap little Jones. If you're poor, you don't need to be eating out every night. And now, honestly, look, I'm a parent, so I fall guilty of I've felt guilty of this at times myself. I've spent bill money on Christmas. I've done all kind of stupid stuff. I've spent bill money on Christmas. I've been behind in bills, but spent extra on a birthday instead of spending less on a birthday and then catching up on my bills. I've done all that. I've skipped payments on stuff because I was reckless. You know what I mean? Because I didn't manage my ride. Like, I've done it. Like, I'm not saying that I'm perfect. I'm not perfect. But this is how I know that, this is how I know it's not oppression, but it's choice. Because I can look at my own life and I can look at the lives of the people I know. And we make decisions. We have the power to make decisions. We buy cars we can't afford. And we're paying a whole bunch of money on a car we can't afford. Because, you need a car. You really want a car to be able to travel, and it opens up job opportunities and stuff and things like that. But we'll get cars we can't afford. Or it'll be like, oh, we can't get a car because we got bad credit. So we're going to go to the little hack dealership that's going to charge us so much more interest instead of us focusing on getting our credit right, which our credit becomes bad because we become neglectful in our bills and we become irresponsible in taking care of our financial obligations. So then our credit sucks, and then it's held against us, and then we talk about how the system's designed to keep us down. That's not how it works. It's you made bad choices. And if you made bad choices because your parents didn't teach you, it's because it's them. Your parents didn't raise you right. So they need to be held accountable. And their parents need to be held accountable if it's a cycle. The only way the cycle is going to change is by you learning, somehow, whether it's by you just, observing and learning yourself, or by you being around somebody that can teach you. It can change by you taking hold of those things and you teaching your kids to take hold of it and to have more responsibility and not just sitting back and taking whatever's handed to you. And I don't mean handed to you like as in welfare. I mean handed to you as in, life circumstances. Because, like I said, immigrants can come here with nothing and they'll hustle and bustle and they'll get it done. And then now they're living comfortably in the suburbs somewhere. And they're doctors and they're scientists or something. Look, a lot of this so-called oppression, even if you think that the system is rigged against you, it can be overcome with choices. You are responsible for your choices. If you choose to drop out of school and start a bad cycle, if you choose to have children at a young age, you may say, well, I didn't choose, it just happened. You had sex knowing that the possibility was that you can have kids at a time when you couldn't afford them. That's a choice you made. You chose to take that risk. So live out, take responsibility for the mistakes you made, and live out what you need to make them right and to make the life you have for yourself, not blaming it on other people. If you are if all of your problems are because of outside forces, that means you are completely helpless to change them. And that makes you a slave. That makes you completely reliant and dependent on whatever that outside force is. So if you're talking about it's the government, that means that you're a slave. You're the government's bitch. So don't talk that black power stuff if you have a victim mentality. And stop trying to blame everything on racism. And what bugs me is you'll know people who made bad decisions themselves. Like, while a lot of y'all are talking, a lot of y'all people that I interact with, you're successful. You either own a business or you got a steady job and you're taking care of your kids and you're not like living in a crime-ridden area, whatever. Why is that? See, you can push the whole victim narrative, but truth be told, a lot of y'all who promote that, your very own life literally contradicts it. Your own life proves you wrong, because your life, if I was to ask you, well, how did you escape it? Well, I was fortunate enough to go to school. I was fortunate enough to do this. You had choices. You may have had a support net that other people don't have, but in the end, you made choices, and those choices allowed you to live a better type of life than the people that you're complaining are oppressed by. So it's like, you'll have a life where you're talking this narrative, you're pushing this narrative, but you yourself would prove me right and will prove you wrong. That all you have to do is make the right choices and the right decisions and take responsibility for your future, basically. And you can overcome all of the stuff that you say is oppression. So root cause analysis, basically, is like you have to learn of how the problem started. And at the same time, you have to be accountable for the areas that you can be accountable. You can't be accountable for everything. If you you know what I mean? But if you're a young child, and some of us, this has happened to some of us, if you're at a young child, you're exposed to like guns and violence and drugs and that sort of thing, then logically when you get older, that's what you're going to be into. But when you reach a certain age, you're still making that choice. Everybody has doubts in their minds. Everybody has been offered at some point. Someone's offered another way of how to live. And whether or not you continue to do what you've always known, or you take a leap of faith and do something differently and step out of that, that's completely up to you. But no one here is forced to do any of the self-destructive behaviors that we do. We're not forced to be that way.